Okay, well, Huddersfield, from Carriacou, which is what? It's a small island of Grenada, largest of the Grenadine Islands. I came to, well, growing up in Carriacou has been wonderful. It's the best place for anybody to grow up as far as I'm concerned. And I still go back there often just to recharge my batteries. I left Carriacou after leaving school in 1960 to join my elder sister, which is Edwin's mom, Phyllis, in her. She was like my second mom, really. We've always been close, and I came up here to supposedly finish my education.
Okay.
And I was somewhat disillusioned with what I encountered when I got here, to be honest. In 1960, if you can imagine, Huddersfield was grim. It was very cold, coming from a beautiful little island and landing in Huddersfield, landing in Waterloo. Or Southampton, Waterloo. My sister met me at that Waterloo station, and I came up with two of my cousins, and I couldn't believe how dreary the place was. Then we traveled to Huddersfield. Now,
what age was this? What age was you when you made that first massive trip over from
Carriacou? I was 16. I just left school, and yes, I was 16 years old, full of energy, and I must admit I was disillusioned when I came here first. It took me a while to get used to the cold. And if you can imagine Huddersfield in those days, it was not only cold, it was dark, it was, I'd never seen anything like that. It was like going into a different world. And it took me a long time to get used to waking up, and in those days, I couldn't get used to waking up and it's dark and going to bed and it's dark, cold, and the winter seemed. Well, I'm in London now. I've been in London for quite a number of years, but growing up in Huddersfield in those days, I spent 10 years in Huddersfield before I moved to London. But it was just the weather was so, and you used to have some serious fog in those days. So it took me a long time to really get used to that. Up to this day, I still can't. But yeah.
So you came over at 16.
To what?
Phyllis. What was the first thing that you did? Did you go into work? Did you do any more? Did you further your education? What was the first thing that you did?
I had to enroll, and I remember. I remember going to. My sister took me to what they call a labor exchange, and to sign on to get your national insurance number and all that. And before I left Carriacou, I had a job, and one of my cousins was working in one of the biggest department store in town, in Hillsborough, and he was the manager there. So he got me a job in Carriacou, and I left school, and I was earning, decent money for that time. And I remember, so when I didn't really want to leave Carriacou, to be honest with you, but my family said, well, you have to go and finish your education and go. And my uncle, in fact, a man called King Saul, I grew up with him, and my granduncle and my grandaunt, and bless their soul, they looked after the whole family, and he sent everybody to England. He must have sent at least, he grew up in the States, he lived in the States for a long time.
Right.
He was very American, and he said, "But you got to go up there, out there, and find your own way." And anyway, they told me, you go and get your papers to go to England. And I came, but when I came, and my sister took me to this place, the Labor Exchange. I was doing stock taking because I wasn't bad at school, and helping as a junior with the management of the stock in a place called W.E. Julian, which is it was the largest department store in the town, Hillsborough. And I was, I mean, that was the best paid job in Carriacou at that time. Apart from being a teacher, that I was earning what decent money. I think I was getting about $35, $40 a month in those days. This was as I left school. So I was pleased that, a lot of people wanted that job and didn't get it, but
you did. Good.
Through family connections, I got it. And so I was really pleased because, I was able to give my mom some money, get my mom. I mean, I never forget the first time I got my monthly wage. I went and bought some clothes, and this time you buy stuff from Trinidad mainly, and I was cool. I was the cool dude in the village. So when I came here and I went to the labor exchange, and the woman said to me, she said, well, what do you want to do? What were you doing in Carriacou? I said, well, I'd like to be an accountant, because I wanted to continue with that kind of job thing. And she said, well, you won't get that here. I looked at my sister. And that was the baptism of fire. That was my introduction to Huddersfield and England. I remember looking at my sister and I thought, how could you agree for me to do this thing? Anyway, I didn't say anything. And when we got outside the labor exchange, we exchanged some. I said, I could never imagine. I saw the racism straight away, and that really, it did have an effect in my whole life because here you are, you're supposed to be coming to finish your education. I thought, well, yeah, if I can get into college, and I was prepared to do work just to help to send some money for my mom and things like that. Anyway, they gave me a card to go to a mill. It was one of the biggest mills in Huddersfield at the time, and I couldn't believe that. It was John Crowther's, because what happened, everybody was going in the mills, and I thought, that's not my style at all. Don't expect me. So it was me and my cousin, Winston, and they sent both of us there. And as we was walking down to the office where the mill was, and I saw this guy I knew from home. He was older than me, and I saw him pushing a skip with yarn and stuff. And I said to my cousin, I said, I hope they're not expecting me to do that. Yeah. Anyway, we went in, and the guy said, yes, you can start whenever, on Monday or something. And so I thought, well, yeah, let me just try this and see, at least it's something. If that's what they're offering, I'll try it. And I went home, I told my sister, well, the guy said to me, come in on the Monday and we'll start you on a trading scheme doing pattern weaving. I had no idea what that was at the time. So I told my sister, she said, well, that's okay, because pattern weaving is a good job when you finish your training.
Yeah.
Okay. I went to woke up in the morning, got the bus, and looked at, in the fog. That time they had trolley buses in Huddersfield. We got on the bus. The bus was, everybody's smoking on the bus on the top deck, and I thought, wow, what is this? The place was just like the whole bus was full of smoke. I never experienced that kind of stuff. So we stopped off at Millsbridge and walked down to this place. And the guy took me into this guy met me in the reception area, and he took me to this department where all the weaving machines was, and all I can hear was noise. I thought, what is it? And this man took me to the weaving machine and said, well, you're the first black person we're going to teach. We're going to train on this job. And if you once you learn this, it's a well-paid job and blah 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 blah. I wasn't interested in that job at all because it just was not me. I stuck it for a little while, but when I found out, and don't forget, I was working at home. I had a job, and to get that job I got in Carriacou was like, it was a big deal. And when I got my first wage packet, it was less than what I was getting in Carriacou. That even made me more angry. I thought, what? So I went and I didn't have to pay rent and pay this and pay that. So I told my sister, I said, what is this? I think I was getting £5, 5 and 6 wages, and time they take out your insurance and tax and all that, you end up with £4, 12 and something. I had to give my sister something, and I thought, this doesn't make any sense at all. So I contacted my uncle. My uncle was pretty well off. I said to him, Uncle, I want to come back home. I'm not feeling this place at all. And he responded to me. And those time was letters. So, well, you're in it, and this would be the making of you song. So just stick it out. I said, okay. And then they asked me to join, to go to college and learn the techniques of pattern weaving at Huddersfield Technical College. So I went and registered for 3 subjects. I was always interested in sociology because that's what I wanted to do from Carriacou. So I started doing some courses to get the qualifications I need to do sociology. I registered for that. I registered as a welder, arc welding, because I was trying to be practical, arc welding, pattern weaving, and sociology. So I was going to college in the evening and going to work in the day, just trying to help the whole situation. And while I was still at college, I think I did that for about 2 years. And some friends of mine, well, they weren't friends because in Carriacou, you have different areas. We're from the eastern side. And some boys, used to be some musicians, some older musicians in Huddersfield. And in Carriacou, I was always singing. I used to run away and play tuba, and my mother didn't like it. But we call Pan Yard was near the school. So me and my friend we used to run home, get our lunch, and run back to the Pan Yard and do a little bit of practicing before we go back to school in the afternoon. And so I've always been singing in church, singing in school, singing in the Boy Scout. I've always been singing and doing music. Music was the first love. My mother was a very good. The whole family, loved singing. So I grew up in Ireland, and I met a friend, and he said to me, "There's some boys looking for." They heard that you're very musical, and I used to keep myself to myself in those days. And There were two bands from mostly Carriacou boys. That was one of them was the Twilights, and the other one was Bob Adams and the Echoes. Now those were two top bands in playing rock and roll in the 60s in Huddersfield. People don't know that, but those boys.
So this is where you met them. When you once you'd started college, you met these members of these bands over here in Huddersfield that you knew from Carriacou.
Yeah, yeah. They were the older boys. And in fact, one of them was I used to do concerts as well in Carriacou, in school concerts. And one of them we call him Mackie. He was with the Twilights. In fact, he's Edwin's uncle. He's a Macintosh. And
which one was that?
Mackie, Walton.
Walton, all right, okay.
Mackie was like my hero because he was older than me. He was going out with a cousin of mine at the same time. So, but in Carriacou, when they have concerts, Teacher Louis used to have concerts in Mount Pleasant School, and I was always the one that would pick to do the parts and stuff. We used to do dialogue. I mean, Carriacou's changed now so much. Even now, I'm telling people, they're mad because it helped me so much. Although I wasn't thinking of music as a career, it did help me regarding stagecraft, regarding projection, everything. And Mackie is the one that used to play guitar for me when I'm singing.
Okay.
In this function. So coming up, he came up here before me, and seeing him playing and singing, I used to go and watch them when they're playing in the clubs and dancehall and stuff like that. And then the other band was called Bob Adams and the Echoes, and I used to go and watch them as well. And one day I was I was sitting there watching them rehearse, and the drummer, a guy called Roy Noel, Power we call him in Huddersfield now, he's still up there. Mm-hmm. He said, "Come and have a go on the drums, man." I said, "Okay." So I got on the drums, and I really fit in because I could play the pan. The coordination wasn't too bad, and I played a tune with them, and then the word got around that this boy can play drums. So some younger guys, more my age group, was putting a band together. And this was. So there was about 3 or 4 bands in Huddersfield playing different kinds of music. Those guys were doing more rock and roll because in that age group. But the guys that was forming this new group contacted me and said, "We've got a little band going down in a place called Back Street, and but they're from the other side of Carriacou, of the island. We're from the east side. They're from the southwest side." And it's a small island, but the people are so different. So I went down and have the guy who was the guitarist, a guy called Charlie Davis. He is from Belmont in Carriacou, and he was a very serious guy when it comes to music. He was doing a lot of courses and learning the guitar properly and stuff. So that appealed to me. He said, "Come down and join us." I said, "Oh, okay." But don't forget, I was still going to college and stuff at that time. And he was also doing a course at college. And we clicked. From the first time I sat on the drum, and the band just took off. We started doing similar gigs to the other guys, but we had a different kind of a vibe, a different energy. And so when we start doing gigs, I decided from then that if I'm going to do this, I want to do it properly. Yeah. So I didn't have the money. And I said to my sister, "Can you lend me some money to buy?" Because I wanted a drum kit, a brand new kit. I said, I don't want a second-hand one. I want a new kit. And there was a place in Barnsley we went. this guy had a music shop there, Mr. Crossland, on King Street in Barnsley. And he used to help a lot of the musicians to get their instruments on hire purchase and stuff. So we went up there one day and he said, I said, can I have a drum kit, a new drum kit? What have you got? And he showed me this kit, and it was a Premier kit, a silver glitter Premier. I never forget that, drums. And I said, yes, I'll have that one. So everything was brand new, the parts and everything. So he said, well, I think the kit was about, with higher purchasing, came up to nearly £200, and my sister lent me the deposit to pay on the
Mr. Phillips lent you the deposit.
That's a surprise for a start.
That was it. That was me, and I remember spending time because they give me all the parts, so I had to set up the parts together for the bass drum, both the holes in the bass drum for the tom-tom and all that kind of stuff. And we started doing gigs, and I was so proud of that kit, man. It's like, wow. And everybody thought, well, what are you doing buying a brand new drum kit? I said, well, this is not a joke. I am serious about this. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it properly.
I'm interested in knowing, you're saying you was doing gigs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What kind of venues were you doing these gigs at? And what were they primarily for, groups that, Carriacou people or black people, or were the audiences mixed?
We did everything. We started off playing in weddings.
Okay.
Carriacou people went.
Right.
St. Thomas's.
Nice.
Yeah.
Bankville Road. Any fete, any dances they had, because very quick we sort of built a reputation, and we sort of overtook a lot of the bands that were there before us, because we were young and energetic, and we were putting a different kind of energy. As I said, I mean, I was always I was into the rock and roll, but music was changing. So I was into R&B. I was into soul. Soul music was coming big time at the time, especially New Orleans music. So when we were doing gigs, we started attracting a younger crowd from Huddersfield, and then the word got out there about this young band who were called the Black Diamonds at the time, and we started branching out to working men's clubs. It was mainly the English working men's clubs and some pubs outside Huddersfield. Maybe in Barnsley, there was a place in Barnsley we used to play called Hoyland Miners Welfare Hall, and the older boys used to play there every weekend. So we got a gig there, and the whole thing just, it just developed into something really special. And we entered an audition. The word got around, and we went. This audition was a German guy was coming over, and this is about 1964, between 63, 64, and 65. This guy came over, and he was auditioning musicians to take to Germany. Now, at that time, the music was changing. The people was getting into the Beatles and what they call the Liverpool boom. Every band from the UK, a lot of the guys was going over to Germany at a certain time and play in the clubs in Germany. And the response over there was like, wow. Everybody wanted to go to Germany at the time. Mm-hmm. And we won. The audition was in Bradford University. Loads of bands from the north. And we won that audition. that was the
Black
beginning.
Diamonds won. The Black Diamonds won the audition.
Say that again?
The Black Diamonds won the audition.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And that was the beginning of something. We went over there. At that time, I was playing drums mainly because the band, before I joined the band had a singer. He was from Carriacou as well, a guy called Chris. But I was quite happy playing drums because I love drums. That's my favorite thing. I love percussion is my thing. And so we went to Germany, won the audition, went to Germany, and that was my first trip abroad since I came to England. This was in 65.
So how old would you have been now then? Just coming into your 20s, late teens?
Late teens.
Yeah.
Late teens. I was about 19, going on 20. And that was my first professional gig.
Wow.
When we got to Germany, we went to a place called Gelsenkirchen. And the cousin who we traveled together, Winston, he joined the army. Because he couldn't take the mill stuff at all. And he went to grammar school in Grenada. We were very close. We grew up together. We traveled together. We did everything together. And he said, when we got here, he said to me, let's join the army. I said, I ain't joining no army. He went for the interview and he got in and he came. We were sharing a room at that time. He said, come on, let's join the army. I said, no, that is not for me at all. And so he went to Germany. And when we won the audition to go to Germany, because we used to correspond, and he said to me, he said, I can't remember where the place he was, but we were going to a place called Gelsenkirchen in the east of Germany. And I contacted him. I said, well, can I see you when I come to Germany? He said, yeah, man, with me. And that was that. We went to Germany. I realized, whoops. Hello?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Yeah, we went to Germany, and that was the best experience for me at that time, because I now realize that you can actually do this, because we were playing every night, and we were playing 3, sometimes 4 sets a night, especially on Sundays. We do 1 in the afternoon, 1 and 3 in the evening. And the time we left Germany to come back to England, the band was really kicking because you're playing regularly. And by that time, the singer we had, his voice wasn't as strong as mine, because I've been singing from home so I used to do a lot of the singing and playing drums at that time. And I realized, okay, the promoter got us a really nice house to stay. So everybody, plus we could cook our own food, and we get paid at the end of the month. And I thought, I didn't realize you could play music and make money. So we, after we finished that, the first tour, I think we were supposed to be there for about 6 weeks. We ended up spending 3 months.
Wow.
And by that time, I was supposed to be still at school, at college. So I made an excuse and told him that I had to go somewhere. I didn't tell him what I was going to do. It wasn't the done thing at the time. So I made the excuse, and we went to over there, and it was a success. Then when I came back to England, I went back to college, and the German promoter came over again, and he said, I wanted you guys to come back and do a more extensive tour in a place called Gießen, which is near Frankfurt. There was a club there where a lot of the Americans used to hang out, the GIs at the time. And we got in. We got to know the Americans that was coming in there mixed a lot. So we ended up doing a lot of the American bases as well, and the money was even better. So I thought, whoa, yeah, let me look at this thing as a possibility. And when we came back, after I think we spent about 2 months there, the Americans used to bring me, because at that time I was very much into Chuck Berry, you know, Little Richard, and those kind of rhythm and blues artists. And when we finished that tour, I think it was a couple of days before we left to come back, this American GI black guy came to me and said, give me an album of the Impressions. And for the first time, I'm hearing the other side of American music, which was Wilson Pickett, James Brown, Wilson, Otis Redding, the Impressions, and that style of soul music got me interested in the other side of things. And when we got back to England after that trip, the Germans really liked female singers, so we got rid of the guy, the singer we had, and I was already playing and singing on a lot of the stuff on the shows. So I was used to it. I used to stand up, play the drums, and sing at the time, and it was like a novelty to those people. So that went down really well. And I got a cousin of ours. Her name was Monica, and we had a guy from Leeds who was getting into that kind of stuff. He was the agent, and he heard about the band and came to see us in Huddersfield. We were playing somewhere. I think it was a pub somewhere, and he said, "I want to manage you guys." And by that time, I brought Jenny, Monica, we would change the name to Ruth and Jenny Jackson, and the High Timers.
Wow.
That was when the whole thing sort of a snowball, because we were doing a lot of gigs all over the country. The agent and manager was one of the top in the north. He was from Leeds, a guy called Danny Poller. And he started knocking everything into shape. And there was a studio in Huddersfield. When we was coming back from tour in Germany, a guy called Matt. I don't know if you've heard of the amplifier Orange. Now the base for that is Huddersfield. Mm-hmm. Matt, our bass player, used to blow speakers. Every time we come back from Germany, we had to get a new set of bass. he was to play so loud. And I remember we coming back from Germany and went down. We always go and see Matt because he had a studio there, and we used to do demos. I mean, Huddersfield, even to this day, I can't understand how Huddersfield changed. Matt used to love the band, especially when we brought Jenny in, because he knew Jenny. Mm-hmm. And he said to the bass player, he said, I'm gonna make you a bloody amp that's not gonna blow. And he did. He made us a amplifier, and 100-watt bass, two 18-inch speakers in one cabinet, and a separate amp at the top. And then he made us a PA system, right? And when we went out with that amp, and the band, even after I left Huddersfield, the guys still used to use the amp, and that amplifier turned into Orange, because Matt was a lovely guy. He had a shop in King Street, just opposite music shop called Woods, which was down on King Street, and Matt's studio was in the yard. The shop was at the front, and so we used to be there all the time, and that really did help us enormously, because we had a place not only to do demos and stuff, and go and play and listen back to how you sound and all that kind of stuff. And I remember doing a gig in Sheffield University. By that time, the things have stepped up, and we were doing colleges. Danny, the agent, he was the top manager in the north. So a lot of the London bands used to come up north, and all of them used to be booked through him. Manchester bands, I could name them, but I'm not really into that. But all the top bands that went ahead and did big things. Some of the guys from Led Zeppelin, there was a band called John Evans Smash, Jethro Tull, all those kind of bands was from Manchester. And then you had a band from Nottingham called 10 Years After. In fact, Alvin Lee from 10 Years After, Danny used to be the agent. So we used to share the bill on a lot of these college gigs, and that really did it for me. But the money was good. That's when the bands. That's when the money, the government used to subsidize a lot of the college and university circuit. So people you could play and you could earn a living of doing music. We used to do like 3-4 gigs a week, easy. When we did London, it was mainly to do with prestige, and it was never. The money was up north, from Scotland, come right down. I remember us doing a gig in Sheffield University, and we were supporting Fleetwood Mac. That was at that time. Mick Fleetwood, he just formed Fleetwood Mac with Peter Green, the guitarist, and we were supporting them at Sheffield University. And when they heard the sound we was getting from the PA system and the whole sound, they were very impressed. And I remember Mick Fleetwood asking me, "Where did you all get this PA from?" And we told him about Matt. So he saw it because he'd never seen that setup before. It was called Matt Amp. And he went down to London, Mick Fleetwood, and told this guy called Cliff Cooper, who had a record shop in Charing Cross Road, and told him about this equipment that he heard this band from Huddersfield was using. And Cliff summoned Matt to London, and that was the beginning of Orange. You must have seen a lot of the top bands from London now. It's all of that. Now, Orange amps are one of the Americans love it because it's made to last. It's a long amplifier. And when Matt came back up and said he's done a franchise with Cliff Cooper to let them use the mechanism he's using for the Matt amp and call it Orange. And there's one. Matt is gone now. But it's a lot. There's a factory up in Melbourne where they're still making the Matt amp.
And that's where it began. Wow.
I'm particularly. I'm interested in what the overall feel was in terms of, because music can make such a difference.
Oh yeah.
What and you were doing so many varied kind of venues and varied kind of gigs and places like universities and stuff. And I know even for the guys in you know, you did, you know, quite a lot of places in Halifax and stuff, because you did quite a few gigs across there too.
Oh yes, oh yes,
But
oh yes.
what I'm interested in is that, was there a varied response culturally from that you experienced in different parts of the country or in different towns across Yorkshire and stuff? What you know?
Oh yes.
Was everything always, you know, oh look, these guys are great, or when the times when you got away by the skin of your teeth?
Well, I mean, we were the top earning band in the UK in the late 60s, early 70s. I stated it in Melody Maker, which was one of the top music papers, and Musical Express. We had a very good show, and when we play, anywhere we played, I mean, we was right across the board. Manchester was another stomping ground for us, because the soul thing was happening at that time. So we made sure we did, when we did stuff, I started writing even from them times, and we was mixing our own vibe with the American vibe. Now, Halifax, there used to be a club there called Plebeians. In fact, there's something on the television. If you Google Ruth and Jenny Jackson, you'll see a film. The BBC did a documentary on soul music. And they came, BBC Two, I think it was it. They came to Halifax and filmed. We used to do the all-nighters. But now in those days, I mean, you could earn a living doing music, because there was loads of clubs. There was clubs in Leeds, Sheffield, Manchester, right across the country, even as far along as Portsmouth. We always worked. You know, we were always on the road, and that, bless Danny Pollock, he made sure he kept us working, and through that, we earned the reputation as the highest paid non-recording band in the country, because we were going out for like £250 a night in the 60s, which was a lot of money in those days. So you're working a minimum 4 nights a week. And that was good money in those days. So we not only did the colleges, we did the top clubs. When we come to London to do a show, we'll do maybe about 2. We'll do Reading University, and then we'll do a place called the All-Star Club, which is a black club in East London. We would do the Q Club in Paddington. So we was right across the board. We went right across the whole sphere of black music. You understand? So when our audience wasn't just black people, it was right, the mud era, the soul era, it was in the middle of that, bang in the middle of that. You know, so when it comes to, there's a club in Manchester called the Twisted Wheel. If you Google that, you'll see Ruth and Jenny Jackson named there along with Stevie Wonder and all the Motown that are coming from the States. If you Google Mojo Club, which is a club in Sheffield owned by a guy called a young Pete Stringfellow, who moved to, I remember Pete saying to me, his mom used to be in the cloakroom, his dad, his brother in the door, and Pete was the DJ. He was one of the top DJs in the North at the time. And I remember him saying to me, he said, I'm going to come to London and show them how to run a bloody club. And he did that. He moved from Sheffield to Leeds, where he had a club called Genevieve. And then from Genevieve, he moved to London. And I was walking up the Heath, because I hadn't seen Pete for a long time. And I saw him on Hampstead Heath. And he didn't recognize me. I shouted him. I said, Pete. He said, he wasn't sure who it was. Anyway, he recognized me, and we exchanged a few things. But as far as in Newcastle, you had the Whiskey a Go-Go. In London, you had the Whiskey a Go-Go. You had the Flamingo. So there was work, and that's why this situation at the moment is so terrible for musicians. I mean, I don't do as many gigs as I used to then, but it's really, I mean, most of my musicians from the band, when I'm ready to do a tour, a lot of the guys that they tour with big names. You know, the drummer who was with me, he recorded 2 of my albums. He's with Stevie Winwood, who was with the Spencer Davis group at the time. So we all go back, you know. My guitarist, he is now with UB40. So we have the history of black music in this country, you know, going right back to the 60s. And, I've never lost not the energy to perform, because I love live music anyway. That's the backbone for me. That's what gives me my energy, and it makes me feel good, and that keeps me going up to this day. And just fast forward a little bit, and after being in the industry for a while, when we did some demos at Matt Studio, as I was saying. And our manager at the time, Danny Pollock, he brought the demos to London, and we got a record deal. There was 3 companies interested at the time. One was Island Records, the other one was Pie, and the other one was EMI, Beacon Records. Now, Beacon was a new label just starting off, and it was owned by a black guy called Milton Samuels. And by that time, things was changing, and I wanted something black to represent us. His label was called Beacon Records, and we decided we was going to go with Beacon. And they had a hit with in the 60s, late 60s, with a group called the Showstoppers from the States. And it called Nothing But a House Party. So he had some money, and we decided to go with him. And, you know, through there we had, 4 or 5 singles, an album. And that was when I decided the band we had, the Black Diamond, that turned into Ruth and Jenny Jackson and the High Timers. We decided, I wanted to progress. We needed a different kind of energy, and that's when me and Jenny decided to move to London, because Danny, our manager, was moving to London. By that time, he was working with some of the top names in the business, and we moved to London. He moved down here, and we moved down with him. The rest of the band wasn't.
How old?
Eh?
Sorry, how old was you then when you made this big move to London?
I was 22, 23.
Yeah, so still young. And how old was your cousin, Jenny? Monica.
She was 1 year older than me, so yeah.
So it was just the two of you that moved down, no family?
I mean, even just this week gone, somebody was interviewing me, and they was asking me, what happened to Jenny? And, it hurts me, because once we moved to London, we were doing a lot more tours in Europe. We had a couple of hits in Italy. So in the summer, we'd go over to Italy and tour the whole of Italy. We'll probably start the tour in Holland, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, and then we'll do a major tour in Italy, because we had a couple of hits there. And that was one of the reasons why we had to move to London, because we had the following had spread to the continent. And Huddersfield, by that time, the music was changing. I wanted The musicians had to be more professional. The musicians had to learn their craft. And I was a hard taskmaster as far as the music is concerned. So I got musicians from London. We went to Europe. We kick over there. We come back. Within a month or so, we go back there. And Jenny, things were changing on the music scene. Jenny by that time I was in London, and I wanted to spend more time in London with my family. And Jenny already she wanted to stay in Italy because we had a huge following there. We had a couple of hit records there, so we could work in Italy anytime. And by that time I was thinking, no, I don't want to be in Italy all this time. And that's when we split up, really. She decided she wanted to spend more time in Italy, and I said, no, I want to spend more time in the UK and concentrate on other things. Is that enough?
Yeah. Went your separate ways. What an amazing story. Wow. And what a fast pace it all took off.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, even Huddersfield people don't really know about me, to be honest.
No.
Eh? Hello?
Not even Huddersfield people. Half your family don't know.
True. That's true. But I mean, if people want to find out, they can find out. But the thing is, with me and music, it's so important, and I don't think that we take it to the fullest. We tend to think, oh, it's only music, but it's not. It's music is a very, very significant part of my life, and it will always be. I just love music. I love the feeling it gives me, the spirit. I'm in there, but I also had to find a way of making it work, making it pay. And in 1985, I went home back to Carriacou after 20 odd years because I was touring a lot. After 20 odd years, I went back to Carriacou. And that was a wake-up call for me because, you realize you touch base on the soil of that precious island, and something went through me. And I wrote a whole album down there called Freestyle. And I came back here. When I came back to the UK, myself and a friend of mine who's now, he used to play drums with me when I moved to London. His name is Byron Laifouk. It's one of the artists that we handle. We set up an organization called the Black Music Association here. And it was basically to learn more about the business side of the music industry. That way really, because I think that was lacking terribly, and it's still lacking up to this day. That, we play the music, but somebody else collects the money, and somebody else tells you what is what and what and what, and you don't know anything about that side of business. So we set up the organization to educate musicians about the business side of music. And we launched that. We got some funding from the GLC and Camden Council, which is where I live. And we put on a seminar at the Shaw Theatre in 1985 when I came back. Well, I set the whole thing up in 83 when I got back from the UK, and we launched it in 85. This was the same day, in fact, there was when they had the Live Aid at Wembley. And it wasn't planned or anything, so we had a lot of promotion for that event because it was something that everybody was thinking to do it, but nobody knew how to do it. And they were coming back from Carriacou just give me that energy, that push to do something more substantial rather than just playing music. There's a business there to be had, and we knew very little about it. So that's where the organization was putting on seminars, finding out who's making the money from the music, what percentage the musician gets from the music from one record, and you realize that the musician gets very little. So I was fighting against that, and I'm still fighting. I'm still doing it. we set up this organization called Black Music Association. Out of that came one of the artists which I still, involved with, called Omar. Omar's father used to play drums with me with Ruth and Jenny Jackson when I first moved to London, and we always felt that we needed to know more. We have to keep searching to find out, well, who's making the money out of the music, and hence the organization was formed. And we started having seminars and conferences and stuff going right across the country to help to highlight the injustice that was going on within the music industry. And we're still doing that now. Out of that came a label called Congo Records, Congo Music, which was myself and Byron. I had a label called Umbrella Records. And I started really focusing on the business side of things, and I'm still doing that today. And music is important. It's so important to me, and people need to know and realize that it's an industry, and it's a massive industry, and we see what's going on right now. I mean, I know a lot of musicians right now are suffering because the government is, although as taxpayers, and we have paid, a lot of money in taxes because we were signed to three major record companies with Omar. We signed him we put out the music first on Congo. We still own the publishing rights, which was a thing and unheard of in the music industry, but we managed to do that because we put out the music on our label first, and then we licensed it to Polygram, Universal, Sony, and BMG.
Wow.
So yeah, that's me, and I'm still fighting the good fight.
Let me take you back. Let me take you back.
Go on.
Two things, and Kiki will, I guess, ask you about my man from New Orleans. But before we go there, tell me about Top of the Pops.
Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when we in 1970, we had what 3-4 singles on Beacon Records, and I mean that was a whole eye opener for me as well, because in those times, I mean the industry has certain corruption in it, but we had this track called So Far Away. We had our first single was a track called Lean and Me, not the Bill Withers one, and then we had one called Let's Go Somewhere. And the one after that was Save Me, and then one after that was So Far Away. And by that time we were living in London, and it was Milton, because in those days, there was so much things. You hear so many stories about how do you get on Top of the Pops, and I remember, people used to say, oh yeah, well, those times was, color television was just coming in, and apparently our company had to buy the producer. This is how corrupt the whole. A color telly in order to help get us to go on TV, and that happened. And we got on television, and that was Jimmy Savile. Because Jimmy Savile is from Leeds, and our manager Danny Pollock, they had a cycling club in Leeds, and they used to belong to the same cycling club, so they knew each other, and we used to do a lot of top rank, the bigger venues, in Manchester. I remember doing gigs there with Jimmy Savile. We did gigs in Leeds with Jimmy Savile because of the connection with Yorkshire. You understand? So I mean, the top of the pop thing just came about because of connection, and that's really what works in the music business. It's who you know.
So what year was that then? What year was top of the
pop? That was 1970.
1970. Wow. Would you say that was the highlight of your career, or what was the highlight of your musical career?
The highlight of my career was, I mean, to me at that time, Top of the Pops wasn't a big deal. It was for as far as exposure is concerned and reaching out to the mass audience. But for me, it was the music. It was always the music and coming up with different ideas. And because we always had a different vibe or a different feel to what was really happening in pop. So I always see Top of the Pops as pop.
Yeah.
And really, I always look at how we can make the music better, write better songs, and move it from there. That's why I still do what I do today, because when I go to the Caribbean now, to Caracou, I take my guitar with me, and Edwin will tell you where our house is, which is where I grew up, and where my mother's house spot was. It's perfect for writing. You wake up in the morning, you look over, and it's the Atlantic, and I sit on the veranda there and just write. So I'm working on a new album now, and I think that I'm not saying it's going to be my last album, but I continue to write, and as long as there's things to write about, I will continue to write.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, as Edwin said, we're touching on another gentleman, Champion Jack Dupree. So Jack's daughter is one of my good friends and colleagues, and as I was talking to Edwin about what we're going to do for Black History Month, how are we going to get, good representation, current representation, local representation. It mentioned you'd come across Jack in your career. Was that in Halifax? Was that playing at the same places? How did that happen?
No, in fact, with Champion Jack, going back to our manager,
right,
Danny Pollock. Danny was a very progressive thinker as far as music is concerned, because he would go right across the board. He used to book all the big names, I tell you, from London. In fact, he was one of the first to book Jimi Hendrix up in a small club in Leeds. We've done gigs with all the major acts. And blew some of them off the stage. We did gig with the Who in Leeds University 10 years after. Some of them bands used to support us. We were earning more money than a lot of them. They were going out for 25 quid, and we were going out for about £250. So we were always out there doing things. And Danny, when Champion Jack came over, I think he came over for a London agent, which was a guy called Rick Gunnell. They used to run the Flamingo Club in the West End. And Champion Jack was doing, I was always interested in the blues anyway. That's what was one of my favorite music at the time, and it still is. My music always had that blues feel to it. And Champion Jack, I think, Danny got him a tour of the North, Manchester, Leeds, because there's always blues clubs in all these places, and Danny would cover the whole lot of them. So he ended up going up to Huddersfield, to Yorkshire, and touring up there. And then I found out he was living in Halifax. But not only that, during that time, he had a residency in a pub in Huddersfield. The pub was on the main street of Huddersfield, and I think it was one of them, the back street going behind, between Church Street and the main street. I can't remember what it's called now. Opposite there, the railway station.
Yeah.
So when he had a Thursday residency at this pub, and I used to always go down and check him out. I used to sit down and talk to him and say, "Tell me about the blues," and blah 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 blah. And that's how I got to know him. And I knew the history. I knew he had a partner in Halifax, who I never met. I don't think I have. And then we just became, friends just through the music, because New Orleans music for me is the business, and even to this day, I that's the place I want to go, because it's just have a different spirit.
Fantastic.